Well, ladies and gentlemen, we've got Ken Gordon and Adam Hansen, two innovation experts. I hate that. Yeah. Ken's sitting next to a frickin' keyboard. Do you play the keys?
No. Oh, that's not the right verb. It's beyond play.
Is that true?
Yeah.
Oh, you can play.
Sure.
Give me something for a second.
Okay, let's do a Springsteen too.
I'm driving in your car. I turn on the radio. I'm pulling you close. You just say no. I don't want to.
But you know I'm a liar.
Because when we kill home fire. Yeah! Damn!
All right, there you go.
We're Springsteen fanatics.
We know.
Damn, that's good. Ken Gordon can play the piano.
Also,
Who
his
knew?
piano has a vacuum tube for that really warm, authentic sound.
Really?
It's
Well,
authentic, man. Can't you hear it?
you can hear the pain better.
You can hear the angst, the artistic
there.
angst.
It's right there.
Exactly.
Is that? Didn't Kurzweil invent a bunch of?
He did. He invented the sampling keyboard, the first legitimate sampling keyboard. He's actually my neighbor.
He's your
Is he
neighbor.
Really?
Yeah.
And
in one neighborhood. Let's say that.
And the one that I bring up when we jam is a Kurzweil.
Yeah.
I have one of his.
And you
keyboards.
play.
I do.
Wow.
Oh, this is gonna be musical.
Musical
okay.
podcast.
I have my son is playing guitar. He's 6. I'm
I brought
a huge believer
got the
in that.
ukulele. over
Oh
here.
yeah.
Yeah.
I'm a big believer in learning an instrument, learning how to fight, and playing sport, team sport.
There you go.
Renaissance people.
Well,
Yes.
and that's a good tee up for what today's podcast is about.
Go ahead, tell me.
So
Tell them where we are.
we're at Continuum Innovation.
Just continue.
Just Continuum.
Yes. Thank you.
And Continuum has offices here in Boston, Singapore, Seoul,
Shanghai,
and Seoul and Shanghai.
And Milan.
So we have
And Milan.
and Milan. So we have two of the world's great innovation experts, and
Don't you hate that? Don't you hate when
I do
anybody
hate
says
that.
that?
That's okay.
I know why you hate that. Just because that doesn't. The innovation is you're as good as your last innovation, and then there's always this panic that you're not going to be able to come up with another idea. We all do that, right? I mean, isn't that what sort of like certainly as a comic, and I'm going to do this special July 20th, and then God knows what's going to happen, right? I mean, that's always sort of the idea.
That makes it fun.
I'm not a comedy expert, but
You are comedy.
I'm a lovemaking expert. I'll give myself that.
yeah, you will.
Yeah, but keep going.
But you've earned that also, Brian. And,
So Ken Gordon and Adam Hansen,
and so
innovation.
So the point
Gurus.
is that they're going to help us innovate around mixed mental arts and figure out what all the potentials and possibilities are for mixed mental arts, and more broadly, what does all the technology that we have now make possible for education in the global village?
Good.
What are all the things we can do?
Oh, so it's a really narrow topic.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, and let's start with, I've had a lot of friends who've done very well at branding and in this business. And Joe Rogan, my buddy Brennan, who were like, I love the idea of mixed mental arts. I love that name.
Yeah.
It's, to them, they're like, you've spent all this time building a brand around your name, Brian Callen. You have this fan base. Why are you not bringing them in? Why do we have to go through a maze to find Brian Callen? Why are you not capitalizing on the fact that a lot of people want to listen to what you have to say, not just in Fighter and the Kid, but with these great conversations?
Yeah.
So all of them have said, get your name in the label. I have personally I have a lot of discomfort with that as the self-promotion. Hunter's such a huge part of this podcast, maybe bigger than what I contribute, certainly as much, and so it's always felt very, very sort of weird to not include him, to be saying this is the Brian Callen show. It just sounds, we have enough of that stuff in this business. But the fact remains that we can capitalize on the fact that, I have spent 25 years building this sort of, I don't like the word following or fan base, but at least people who are young and who trust that I have, not, if I don't have something to say, I can bring people to the fore who do. So.
Well, so it's I'm going back to why did I first start listening to the podcast, and it was the Brian Callen show at that time, and so I do go back with you to Mad TV and everything, and so I, as an innovation guy. I won't say guru because there's not a more self-proclaimed pretentious.
I know.
Please.
I get it. We're all speaking the same language.
Although I would like to see you in a loincloth. I think you would do well in that.
This is an image that really no one will benefit from.
Besides your wife, she's all hot.
Let's ask her.
No, we do.
Especially your wife.
No, look, it's fog machines, it's mirrors, it's whatever we need to do.
Fog machines and mirrors.
It's whatever we need to do to make this. We're on 34 years. Of marriage.
All right, let me just say this right now. My next, you will see Fog Machines and Mirror on stage, and I'm stealing it, and know that it originated with Adam Hansen, but I swear to God I'm taking it.
Your lovemaking looks like a Def Leppard music video.
No, the only thing to add, Brian, the only thing to add is elaborate pulley system. And then you kind of have...
elaborate pulley system.
With a fog machine.
Not just a pulley system.
Yeah, the
elaborate pulley. Dude, I'm getting material.
Anyhow, I became... it was really easy for me to see how I could be entertained and get some insight into the creative process by listening to comedians' podcasts, because a lot of it has been talking about your process and everything, and that to me is fascinating. I like to see everything from just kind of initial insight, initial kernel, to iteration, getting better, developing, tweaking, and everything, and then what the final thing is. So I started listening to you, and then you're making this commitment to not just bring on other comedians, which after a while gets a little self-referential and kind of, okay, got it. You know? So to bring on really thoughtful people, but coming from your perspective, bringing Hunter on then, kind of going through that evolution and everything, I just thought there's nothing else out there like this. Mm-hmm. And so the combination of pop culture with just really great thought and the best thinking that's going on in academia and elsewhere in research and everything just became, I think, really important to me. So, like, moving forward, I mean, you can take your cue from other smart branding architecture. So, Courtyard by Marriott, right? How do you get both brands in there? There are other ways of doing that. So Brian Callen as endorser brand, Mixed Mental Arts with Brian Callen and Hunter Motz, if you want to do that. But how to get...
No, it's problematic.
It's just, I'm Brian, with Brian Callen. Yeah. Whatever works. I'm throwing that out here.
Brian Callen, the other guy.
Yeah.
But also, and of course, we know your penchant for the term Toto. So that's, I think that's...
Toto.
With Brian Callen and Toto.
Oh my God.
And we're going to do Roseanne.
Ken Gordon plays some Toto.
Yes.
Some Toto.
All right. But again, I think
you all the way.
I say you. FCG.
The fact that he can just fucking bang that out.
But that's, I think, playing with a few different ways of doing that. And I think, why not this, in innovation, I think it's always important where people make assumptions about either or. Of course, the answer is both and. How do you do that in a way that's still single-minded enough and doesn't just become this gangly, unwieldy thing that no one's going to remember? So I think there are ways of really making the point and benefiting from your name being tethered to it.
Good.
Yeah.
Well, I was also going to say, in the same way that you're saying, obviously I've become such a huge part of this podcast, so have a whole bunch of people whose names we're not even talking about appending it, like Adam Hansen, Ken Gordon, Kate Fogarty, Isaiah Gooley, Brian Jude, and a whole bunch of people that you don't even know, right? And to me, that's the real promise. The promise is not where, it started off as Brian Callen and then we appended Hunter Motz. It's not that it stops there. Like, the point is to bring as many people into this and keep on building the community.
It's true, but I always go back to I don't want to just be talking to people that are already converts. I don't want to be just talking to people that are already interested. Mm-hmm. The challenge is to take the audience that I have, which is typically are not aware that there's some really exciting stuff to be learned here. Mm-hmm. And so I want to be in the business of that persuasion. I want to get in the business of expanding that. Yeah. And that's where the mixed mental arts community is great. They're already there. And what we need to do is create there's this, it's a funny thing because when you start talking about anything that strikes anybody as nerdy, it's not that it's nerdy to them. It's that it's boring.
Oh yeah.
That I don't, and they go, that sounds boring, or that sounds like it's not for me because that sounds heavy.
Yeah.
And so, and I know this is a passion of yours. I want to make this accessible, fun, and if we're going to really make a difference, it's have this. Rogan's done this very well. British welders the other day, these bunch of British welders in the outskirts of England. My buddy was there working on a ship, and these guys were talking about me and Joe Rogan, and they were talking about the ideas that I was dropping on Rogan about Yuval Harari's *Sapiens*.
Yeah.
Now, that's pretty badass, and because that was my intention.
Well, that really is.
And whenever I'm with Hunter, and Hunter's, exposing me to all these amazing ideas, when I do Rogan, I'm basically try to parrot so much of what Hunter says, and so much of the things that I learned, so that I can just get those kernels out there.
But also, Hunter is parroting other books that he's read.
Well, and you're very good at synthesizing and bringing it all together, and don't sell yourself short.
But I'm saying I don't need credit, and I don't even want credit if credit is in the way of achieving the goal.
You and I both feel that way. So the idea is, again, I think we're both on that same. The passion here is, let's get these ideas accessible and out there. We've been talking about that from day one.
Yeah.
So branding, how we brand this, and how we approach this is really the idea of how to make it user friendly, or
accessible,
fun.
And the reason why I pushed for mixed mental arts is because it was an obvious metaphor
100%.
for that
And I
audience
love
that
it.
you're talking
Yeah.
about.
Right.
But the point is that I think that whether it's we just go back to the Brian Callen show, or it's mixed mental arts with Brian Callen, or Brian Callen presents mixed mental arts, or some variation on that, I don't mind. But also part of what excites me about the mixed mental arts metaphor is the fact that mixed martial arts doesn't belong to anybody. It's a philosophy, and then there are many dojos that are practicing it, and they're all testing each other and evolving it forward. And that sort of revolution is really what I'm excited by. So, and that's why I think it may be better to just do the Brian Callen show, right? That's your dojo, that's the shingle, right? And then ultimately what we're practicing is mixed mental arts, because
Mixed mental artistry, become a mixed mental artist.
that's right. Because Joe Rogan is practicing mixed mental arts. Like, he's already doing that. He's just brought that philosophy that he already had to the world of ideas. And he's like, oh, that's useful. That seems to suck. This is great. Like, I'll take that. Oh, I can add in this thing of my own. So he's already doing that. It's just providing a label for the process that's already occurring so that it can be more intentional.
Yeah, and so it lands it conceptually for people who've never heard it.
Right.
And they go, oh, okay, I can kind of
What
get that.
What I like is, though, you're doing something different. There's a lot of people who do podcasts about ideas. There's a lot of people who do celebrity and comedy podcasts, right? But you've created something special and different in that you're taking people with ideas. You're using your celebrity to sort of draw the audience and to sort of get this baseline of people who might be interested in these new ideas, right? But the conversation you have, you're giving Lawrence Lessig a chance to talk in a way that he doesn't normally talk, right? And you ask people what books they're reading. They say, the sexual behaviors. I'm interested in poetry. You're opening up avenues to people with great intellects who are speaking outside of their very narrow sense of speciality, right? And they're doing it through dialogue, through relationship, through a real-time unfolding of like their passions, their intellectual passions, which isn't prepared speech, right? And that's totally different than anything these sort of academics or this sort of adult learning process is happening. I think that's really what you want to capitalize.
It is, because one of the things I notice is, just as a comic, when I interview an author about their book, because they've done the circuit. It's rote. They're literally delivering a monologue.
Totally.
And you have to get them out of that.
Well, I don't know. A long time ago, I had this thing called Quick Muse. I used to be a literary journalist, right?
Oh, wow.
And I used to interview writers, and I would get them, and they have a new book out, and I'd be able to publish the thing in a big place because they had a new book to push. And they'd have the monologue. And I got bored with that. So I worked with a buddy who's a programmer, and we created this software which allowed, I would give a writer a prompt, and I'd say, I want you to make a poem off the top of your head in 15 minutes. and they would write a poem and record each keystroke over that course of 15 minutes.
You want them to make you had the writer come up with a poem,
an actual poem in
Wow.
real time, and then it records it all. You press it back, and you watch Robert Pinsky writing a poem off the top of his head.
Wow.
And some of these guys who did this, it actually wound up in their actual collections of poetry. It went from a sort of dare to part of their canon.
Wow.
But what's
Wow.
brilliant
But the point of it is that it's like, I want you at your best with your language.
Who are you under pressure?
That's
Who
right.
are you?
Well,
yeah.
what can you do with your tool? You know, and like forget about the Q&A. Let's and it was a huge differentiator. And I think I see something like that, what you are doing here, in the different kind of discourse you're creating. And I think that is so important. And that's, if you're going to talk about branding, I think that's one of the things that's really,
Yeah, I
really
think what it
different
does,
what
it
you're
takes all the attention off yourself too.
Yeah.
I think that's how you create a good interview. I had to do a crazy, never forgot. I had to do this. They want me to do this stand-up thing at a home. It's Tony Pritchker's home, the Hyatt Air, and it's the biggest house in Southern California. And people like Angelica Houston are there, and I mean huge like people like, and then politicians, and they want me to get up and do stand-up. I'm like, this is not gonna work, man. I can't. This is in a tent. I can already see this is gonna be a disaster. You got scientists who are boring talking about global warming. The whole thing was a disaster, and then Lincoln Park was going to come up after me, and now Brian Callen. But I remember going, I had to write a poem basically in 15, 20 minutes. I mean, I had to come up with ways to get Lawrence Bender, the great producer, and his hair involved with the piano I was about to do, and global warming. And my buddy Anthony said, I could see you writing. I could see you biting your nails, and he said, and he said it was the best thing I've ever seen you do, because I was so nervous, but a lot of that went into my act. A lot of that shit went into my act. A lot of it.
But
it was crazy.
Awesome? Like you, I'm sure you know that Colin Quinn did his thing where you got involved in history, right?
Yeah.
Right. So, not to tell you what you should do, but you have developed this awesome sort of dialogue with intellectuals, right? If you and Lawrence Lessig, let's say, went on and had like something like that, that became part of your act, the dialogue. Being the guy who pulls this sort of interesting side of these things, like that would be so different and so compelling.
So what do you mean? Give me an example.
Well, instead of a night with Brian Callen and Lawrence Lessig, or maybe you go into the different towns where these different professors have their, things, and you bring them on stage with you, and that becomes part of the act. You work the crowd with the intellectual in the seat next to you, and it becomes crowd work with an intellectual guy, in front of and I'm thinking of the what's his name of Colin Quinn's model, right? That idea where you give the comedy a sort of intellectual structure to it, and that is a huge differentiator. Do you know what I mean? And it's like, the New Yorker would want to know about that.
Sure.
You know
and that's the real magic of this podcast. Like, I've introduced you to these people, right? Mostly because of Amazon's book recommendation system. But the like, if we're really going to give credit, it's everybody who uses Amazon, and the programmers should get a lot of the credit. But the real power of you as interviewer is that you get all of these people who spend all their time on the intellectual defensive to relax and open up and just tell their story. Because any academic who has devoted their entire life to studying one thing, or, there's always something deeply personal there. And usually that dot is never connected. And like, to me, one of the like, there are a couple of things. One, Jared Diamond interview, because you got him to just, he goes, you want it? All right, well, you asked for it. I got him to really get into the details of cannibalism. He goes, well, and
you asked
lactation.
for it.
And but that's what you have spent your life developing, the skill of disarming people. And that's really, everybody is armed right now.
I'm a black belt.
You are a black belt.
No, keep going.
But you spent your life figuring out how to disarm people very quickly, and that's what everybody needs right now, because everybody is so nervous and so on tenterhooks, and somebody who can disarm them and get them to just relax and tell their story. That's the magic.
Well, have you seen Letterman's thing? Letterman's new show, right?
Oh yeah.
And
Next guest.
And there's one point where he's talking. Did you see the last one with Jay-Z?
Yeah.
And he's like talking about they're like, I almost lost my family. You almost lost your family. Let's talk. And it was like, but that was the best part so far of the whole thing, right? But it was that disarmament, and I feel like he had to work really hard to go through like 4 or 5 guests, just not really getting anywhere to get there. You get there. And I'm like, I see there's a market and a hunger, and like, I know just watching myself, I can imagine a million other people going, oh my God, this is real.
Well, that was fun. We do that. Like I've recently had the confidence to do that. I used to be reverential. And now, of course, I'm too old to be that reverential, and we're all doing our best. But Kelly Brogan gets on, and she's got her following, but she's talking about how vaccines and antibiotics are not something she believes in, basically. And I'm like, all right, you're obviously a religious convert, and you also make a lot of money preaching, your alternative way of living. So let's stop for a second. Yeah. But we got into a heated kind of thing, but it made it way more dynamic.
Yeah, way more interesting. It has gotten some of the best engagement of any of the podcasts that we've done, precisely because that's the point, is what people track, or they like. We're like, language came later. We're not linguistic creatures. We track social and emotional dynamics, and then there's actually Magdalena. She shared this article with me about Clarice Lispector and her reading Fernando Pessoa, and there was a line in there, and Fernando Pessoa said, if you want to, the fastest way to make myself unknown is to start talking, because. And that is so true. Is that so often words just confuse and muddy the picture rather than understanding what is going on.
There's this great quote in acting class that I think it was from Sandy Meisner, which was an ounce of behavior is worth a pound of words. Yeah. And it's all that stuff. And then, as a young actor, you're like, put it into behavior, psychology into behavior. That's what you can tell. My acting teacher used to say that. You can tell, somebody's whole life when they walk across the street in front of your car.
But it's also the idea of speak that I might see thee. This idea that our words do reveal who we are. They go beyond what we think we're saying.
Well, when you set up conditions such that
so it's not just gesture behavior. It's also you really are saying more than you can even express.
Yeah, it's always that. It's not about the lines, when you're acting. It's about the intention,
But again, the whole point of this, I think, is that there's something that Brian Callen, in dialogue with another person, is incredibly compelling from a variety of reasons. And
thank you.
But it's that learning element of it.
Yeah.
Right. That's what people are interested in.
Yeah.
That's why they're going, yeah.
Well, so that's the thing. Like, I want to... It's like Hunter said something interesting the other day. He said, a lot of this is smart talk. But I want to know what it looks like in real life. Did you say that? Was that your thing?
Yeah, I mean, this is just something that
this is Adam Hansen.
I've always had intuitions around. And then when I finally found that there'd been work done on it, I, of course, applauded it because it confirmed all of my cherished beliefs. So it's like confirmation bias in hyperdrive. But it's Bob Sutton and
I reference your book all the time, though. Outsmart Your Instincts. No, because you did such a good job of taking all this available science and really kind of narrowing it down and making it, again, user friendly.
Well, thank you. That was the whole intent. We wanted the book to succeed first and foremost as a book, and actually be used. And I'd rather someone read a third of it and actually do something with it than read all of it and just go, okay, I don't need to engage that anymore. So this whole idea of smart talk, one of my massive platonic man crushes, because I'm this geeky, is a professor at Stanford, Bob Sutton, with his partner Jeffrey Pfeffer, did some work on the smart talk trap. And this idea that really smart talk, including negative talk that sounds so adult, and we know how negativity appears irrationally profound, more than it actually is. But beyond that, just if we're in a group and we have this smart talk and everything, that's actually a counterfeit for real work. And like, that actually feels like we've done something. And more often than not, we really haven't. We've just talked about it. We've debated it from several different angles and everything, but then there's no action after it. And so you kind of go...
And by the way, sometimes there's... If both sides or three sides are presenting a really good case, you find yourself scratching your head. I mean, well, it all depends on how you look at it. There are plural truths, but what do we do about this situation?
Well, I mean, we love, of course, dichotomies, right? So anytime we can get just, team blue or team red politically, then that's great. And that's more understandable. We just have those 2 points of relation. The whole from physics, the three body problem, right? The moment you get, how things just get so complex once even a third perspective or agent is involved in it. And so if that's going to be hard to do, let's just talk about it. And then too often that feels like we've actually done something.
Well, one of the ways out of that is this. I think, when you talk to, for example, to a seasoned SEAL Team 6 operative, which I have, when you talk to a seasoned mixed martial artist who's been in the octagon 30 times, when you talk to a strength coach who has to get results because his athletes make millions of dollars, and you then say things like, now, do you have to eat 170 grams of protein to build the muscle? And they go like this. They go, all right, now CrossFit, you train you guys in CrossFit, and they go, or you say to a SEAL Team 6 guy, now, is your gun on blast all the time? Do you have it on automatic when, and they usually they're just quiet, or they put their hands to the air, or they say something like, I mean, it depends.
Exactly.
Or they go, you've been watching a lot of movies, huh? and I remember my buddy was a decorated SEAL Team 6 guy. I mean, the real deal. And I know that because he does all this work with the Navy SEAL Foundation. I found he has the world record for the squirrel suit. He's sponsored by Red Bull.
Yeah.
Andy Sump, he's a great guy. But Andy will be like, I was like, how often is the gun on automatic when he's shooting? He goes, never. That's for actors and assholes. Okay, if your gun is on full blast, you're a tactical asshole because you can't aim. And also, and he just went through the whole thing where he's like, and I would wait for the guy to like unload his clip. He'd be like, and I just wait, and I'd be like, all right, you're out of ammo, bang, and when you hear these guys, the way they talk, very, they've been around, they've had to deal. So, but that doesn't mean that you don't have people who then can analyze big numbers, data, and come up with better ways to do this. So you do need the theory. You do need the theoretical mind, and you need the practical operator.
Yeah.
And so sometimes putting those two together is probably how you
that's
get
the idea.
Yeah.
That is the idea. Really have kind of this vigorous clash of theories, of intellectual models, starting points, and everything. But then critically, I mean, kind of tying back earlier to an ounce of behavior is worth a pound of words. You're going to learn so much more by actually going out and trying this in the real world than any number of hours of hypothesizing about it is great. So start with the right theory, but then actually go.
Well, this was what was so great about the UFC. For so long in martial arts, your master was too deadly to spar, and he'd already mastered fighting.
Yeah.
So Kung Fu and Shotokan karate and Wing Chun and all these different things where you would go through moves and your teacher would tell you all the theories, and then you get in a fight with a boxer or a wrestler. Yeah. And those dudes had been hit a lot, and they understood the human body, and they knew how you moved. So you would hit them, and they would catch your shot, or you'd catch them a couple times, and they'd go, oh, I'll just adjust. I know what I'll do. I'll just take your legs out from under you. You'd be on the parking lot, like having your head just bashed, and all your black belt would just go out there. You'd be punched into white belt in about 3 shots,
Yeah.
And that's real life.
Yeah. Right.
In every aspect of the when it comes to innovation.
Oh, yeah.
Is a housewife going to use this?
Yeah.
When they came up with milk that didn't need to be refrigerated.
Yeah.
It was a genius idea, ultra pasteurization. The problem was, the guys who marketed milk started laughing. And they went, well, you should have come to us first, because housewives are not going to buy warm milk. They're not going to buy warm milk. They want cold milk. It's just the way we've been programmed.
Yeah.
It's one of the, Suzuki Roshi. Suzuki Roshi says, in the beginner's mind, there are many possibilities, but in the experts, there are very few.
Yeah.
And it's the idea of cultivating both those elements to it. So like you can see what you could do with a thing. And then as you go along the process, you narrow it down by saying, wait, this is our experience, this is our knowledge, this is our wisdom.
Yeah.
And taking that openness to possibility and slowly over time narrowing it down to the right one.
So then that strikes me as probably where the podcast should culminate.
Yeah.
We should be moving the cattle to one point. to slaughter. I like using Mongol references and how they
Makes me feel really comfortable.
Well, the
as your
Mongols,
vizier.
that's how the Mongols used to run their antelope. You don't understand anything. They would flank the antelope, get them in one little tunnel bottleneck, and then the slaughter would begin. But you don't know what it's like to have to feed yourself in the Gobi Desert in the wintertime. I apologize to everybody.
Which is
God
why
damn
I'm
it,
so
Hunter.
nervous right now.
I know.
Because I know that as soon as tax revenues go down, the next thing you know, well, I know who to kill.
That's
This guy
right.
over here
That's
with
right.
stripy
That's
polo
right.
shirt.
No, but
Exactly.
the point is,
But
yak
that is
tartar.
yak tartar is delicious.
Yak tartar.
Well, actually, if we're going to talk about the Mongol kitchen, fermented mare's milk?
Yeah, of course.
Really amazing.
Do I?
Sure.
And then,
I was a Chinese missionary.
yeah, and then marmot stuffed with hot rocks. That's another good Mongol dish.
Marmot's wonderful. Anyway, just remember, milk and meat alone will turn you into a
Mongol warriors.
killer.
That does it.
You'll want to annex your neighbor. Now, but I do think that there's something about moving our thinkers into the practical direction.
Yep.
Yeah.
And putting that pressure on them. Sort of like, listen, how do I implement this? You're telling me that I can, in a street fight, I should go for the nose and the balls. Cool. Until it doesn't work. And then what?
That's right.
And what happens when I'm too afraid first time I ever got in a real fight, and I was a black belt, I couldn't feel my legs. I was like, my teacher didn't tell me about the part where I can't feel my legs. I'm so afraid because this guy's a giant Marine. Not a true story, but it sounds good.
Well, yeah,
The thing is-
no battle plan survives first contact with the enemy.
Yeah.
Right? And so it's just doing the preparation and everything, but trying to make sure that your preparation matches as well the conditions that you're actually going to face, right? And that includes who your sparring partner is, whatever. But it's, I think in terms of what we're talking about here, is making it clear to some of these thinkers that we're so interested in what you have that we'd actually like to do something with it.
That's right.
So what,
we'd like to do something
we'd
with
like
it.
to do
Which
something
is-
with it.
which
Is this a tool we can implement?
Which is what also academics want. Like,
Yeah.
that's the thing, is that you talk to these academics and they've been sort of like working on all this stuff because they'd like to see it turn into action.
Yeah.
And if you finally have a community of people who are like, yeah, we're going to do that.
Right.
And some things you can put into action entirely on a personal level. Like knowing how to more effectively learn, that's something that's entirely in your control. You don't need any group action. You don't need any group permission, any of that. Campaign finance reform is going to require forming a much larger group to be able to make effective
I don't know
change.
if it's a group though, because when I hear, I remember listening to Ariana Huffington, and she was, what do we need to do? And she said, I think we need to come together and realize that we are a community. And I'm like, get the fuck. First of all, I don't like you. Second of all, I don't like you. And third, I don't want to be in your fucking group. I don't join jogging groups, and I hate groups. And I don't like group action because I'm too busy and frankly too selfish. You know what I'm saying? And like that. So you're right, but that always seems to fall short. We need to form a collective. What does work is an idea that is packaged in a way that makes the narrative. What we need is a narrative and an idea that's very seductive, right?
Well, it's appropriate that we are in Boston on the anniversary of Lexington and Concord.
Yeah, I knew that.
Yeah.
Sure.
And because
I almost wore my T-shirt.
Nerd alert! Nerd alert!
but
Fucking anti-Mongol.
but Brian, I mean, that's the thing is that, listen, these are cultural intuitions and how you feel about a certain kind of group. But there was also a group of 13 colonies that really struggled to come together. They couldn't see eye to eye. They had different cultures. They had different priorities.
Yeah, they were Americans, not Swedes like you.
Exactly. Not anti-Mongols like me.
Yeah.
And yet, nonetheless, even though they were, actual American Mongols, they came together, they hashed out their differences, and they found a shared narrative.
Yes.
And what I love about, when we talk about things like campaign finance with you is that you believe in fair play. And that's what it comes down to is that, and we were talking this morning about sports metaphors. Like, really what campaign finance reform is just about changing the rules of the game so that it's based on merit rather than on influence or based on or incumbent power.
Well, I've been thinking a lot about our podcast, Ken, and I had never thought about how powerful metaphor was. And I think it was the first guest we ever had who talked about the importance of literature.
Yeah, why do you think that was? Because the fucking anti-Mongol was on a personal quest to go through the science. And then the anti-Mongol realized that actually science is just about testing stories. It's journalism.
Yeah.
That's what science is.
Well, it's also about objective truth and measurable truth.
Yeah, but that's journalism. It's how well it's not about.
I mean, we knew about scurvy way before it was actually implemented.
That's right.
You know, I mean, we knew that limes and vitamin C was how you, and it just took a long time to get that diffusion to go. Yeah.
No, I think the idea of doing some ideas into action, putting the focus on action. Yeah. So coming into MMA or whatever it's called in the future is about how you could take what you've written and thought and do something with the world, and how you could receive it and change your life.
And it'd be interesting to ask those academics for a metaphor. Yeah. It'd be interesting to ask
that's cool.
Ask those academics for a metaphor.
You should put, you know what, maybe a good idea to be take your the guests you learn most from and like advisory board. And bring them all together for
that's a great
weekend and say let's hash out what the future is.
This
is sort of a small version of this, but like me and Adam and Leslie and whoever else.
It's a great idea.
That'd be amazing.
Because I think that would be a really smart way to get a much wider view of what's
great idea.
Well, particularly the guests where they give you the feedback of how different the experience was for them, how great that was. You know,
Dan Coyle
and Adrian Bejan.
Oh yeah,
and
you weren't there for that conversation because you were busy being much more famous than the rest of us.
Thank you. Say it again. Let me get my hand in my pants. Play that music. Play my theme song.
We did Les Bryant's masturbation theme song.
Yes. God, where are my raw eggs?
But Adrian Bejan, so Adrian Bejan is an engineer by training. He escaped the Soviet Union. He's an engineer by training, and then he moved into sort of physics and then evolutionary biology. So he's a guy who has like violated all the lines of academia. The result is that he doesn't have anybody who really appreciates his work within academia, because the evolutionary biologists are like, you're not an evolutionary biologist, and the engineers are like, you know, what are you doing, like exploring this other stuff? And so he was saying at the end of our conversation, this has been the highlight of my day.
Wow.
And that's because he said in academia, it's a seller's market. Everyone is selling their ideas and nobody is buying. And so when we bring these people on the podcast, they suddenly have people who really appreciate their work.
And it takes a lot of work too. When you write a book, that's why I always try to read the book, because it's so hard to write a book and it's such an act of faith. And nobody reads. Like in Hollywood, I know famous directors and writers, and they're like, nobody reads my script. I mean, they're browsing through it on the plane, and then they call me, and I can tell they haven't fucking read it. You know.
I have my kids. From the word go, it's like you must read, and you must read real books. And the reason why is because no one else is doing it. And when you do that, you develop a sense of attention and focus that everything in our culture conspires against.
Yes.
And it's like everybody does it. I do it. We do it all day online. And it's like if you learn the meditative method going through a book, you'll be that much smarter. And I think that's the kind of thing you for your audience in this building, just giving people that sort of the power to defend themselves and to move themselves ahead and to make their lives better.
Yeah.
And professors too, to have a better audience, better engagement, everything else like that. But you really are doing something, I think, that benefits both the sort of intellectuals you bring on here and your audience in a unique way. I think that's a huge. I mean, don't you think that's a huge part of the value proposition here?
Well, yeah, and so much of the work that we do in our respective companies in innovation is challenging assumptions, and the assumption that these ideas are cloistered for a reason and uncloistering them, that's a word, is a worthwhile effort. Isn't a worthwhile effort is something that clearly it's being demonstrated that no, this is something we all ought to do. And particularly getting back to, who becomes an academic with just the idea that I'm consigning myself to a life of monkhood, and really if no one ever interacts with me or my ideas or what I'm passionate about, then that's fine. I will have made my contribution. And
it's a little bit like theoretical mathematicians. I mean, they work on a theorem that's probably going to bear no relevance to the physical world, at least while they're alive, but there's something that drives them to the idea.
Well, that's a real leap of faith, because to your point, it's like might not even be anyone in this generation. Might not even be
a real theorem. A lot of times with these guys, it's like they find out, it's actually not a real question. Huh? What?
So where academics have signaled that that kind of opening and that kind of engagement really is like pure oxygen to them, I think that's awesome. And they're telling you what you need to be doing with them, right? And that is more of that. I think that's showing some openness. I think that's probably showing, how tough was it to sell Professor Damasio on this Fernando Pessoa
Oh, I haven't
event?
talked to him yet. But
Okay.
But he's not a large man, so we'll bully him into a corner, and he'll do it.
Bully him into a corner to talk about his favorite poet.
But that's
What these guys love about Hunter is that he's read everything that they've read, so they just go, who's this dude? Who's this guy?
Also, Brian, partly to toot your own horn because you don't do it enough. Like, you've been exposed to a set of ideas that basically there's not many humans who have been exposed to the number and the diversity of ideas that you've been exposed to at this point. So, you have to understand that, you're better read than many academics and top professors.
Well, absolutely, because their reading is extremely narrow.
Yeah.
That's right.
I mean, because
that's why,
what they have
because
to do.
Ken had brought up this idea, and I wanted to ask you that, is that you were talking about the idea of creating some kind of a university or some kind of a, so people right now can go to a podcast, and that's great.
Right.
And as they're driving and they're thinking, we want them to do that, of course. But there would be it would be wonderful, and you guys have started this with this belt system, but it'd be really amazing to create at the same time this repository, this school, this place where you can enjoy what I have enjoyed, which is be exposed to all these ideas, become really well read even without reading a book, or at least getting the cliff notes, or at least getting the useful information out and hearing how this can be implemented. That would be the goal.
So much
right?
exciting stuff. And what we were talking about before you got here was there's this book about Astro Weeks, which is a Van Morrison album, right? And it's a crazy cult, super duper popular. It's because Lester Bangs, the rock critic, wrote this thing about it, and it's a real, like, serious, deep, poetic. It's like a piece of spirit. It is a piece of spiritual autobiography, and so many people have read this thing, and that's what's clued them into the album or bolstered their appreciation for it, and that's why it's like a major. I mean, apart from the work itself.
The fact, it's great.
Right? Yeah. And this guy has written a book about it, and I was so excited when I saw that. He's written a book about Astro Weeks, and I was thinking, wow, what if somebody brought together all the great sort of testimonies that people put in print about the work they love, about the book or movie or film, right?
Yeah.
And then I thought, well, everybody has something they love that's outside their specialty. Like these guys, like Lawrence Lessig, right, loves Philip Roth. What if you got Lawrence Lessig to talk about?
I'm reading Portnoy's Complaint right now.
What if you got Philip Roth, Lawrence Lessig on stage somewhere? What if you got Lawrence Lessig to write about me and Philip and Portnoy's Complaint, what that meant to me, but to him really to say it? You could put together a book of essays of the smartest guys talking about their passion. That isn't their thing, but they're so smart that when it comes out, it's going to be fantastic. Then do a 25 cities tour and start little book groups around each one of those things. You could build a whole business model out of the idea of people of passion-based learning.
Yeah.
Based on these brilliant folks you know. And then you get your audience out there to write their version. And they become part of it too, like the best one.
Well, that's it,
right,
precisely.
and it becomes that sort of People magazine thing where you get the celebs alongside the notable regular people. And then all of a sudden, you've got a school based on authentic response to the thing that matters most. I want when I saw this book, I was like, I could teach a college class specifically on spiritual autobiography and great fucking rock songs or whatever.
Yeah.
What if you wrote about Springsteen? Right?
Yeah.
Just think about that for a second. Right?
He's why I became an actor.
So what if you wrote an essay about that? We got it to Springsteen. He read and go, oh my God! And then you guys got it, and we did a thing together with you, Springsteen, and thing. And that's now think about that, and think about, and you invite everybody who's listening to you right now to do the same. That's learning. That's engagement. That's excitement on every level, from the expert to your audience to you, to all. And it's that passion of learning that's absent in almost every learning environment.
Yeah.
Right. So that, again,
because people don't know how to implement it. They don't know why it's relevant.
You set up an environment where you show them.
Yeah.
So if I just have the one Lester Bangs article, I go, oh, that's kind of cool. Well, and Lester Bangs is pretty brilliant and everything. So, okay, wow, that's about the most I'm going to get out of that. Now, when I have a second, a third, a fourth point of other people doing similar things with the cultural product that did it for them.
Yeah.
And I started to go, oh,
Yeah.
this is I know what that is for me now.
But you're directed. You
it's
say,
easier
you
for
do
me.
it. We
Yeah.
want you by June 21st to send us your essay about the thing to move your law.
So pass the mic.
Yeah,
Let's get a YouTube
Yeah,
channel.
and it's
going
not
on
just
it,
it's not just Twitter comebacks. It's like, let's see what you can do.
And
Yeah.
it's thoughtful and it encourages reflection rather than reaction,
Yeah.
right? Because
Yeah.
Mr. Bangs writes these long form articles, and I mean, you know, there's no reason why. I mean, you look at the way that Brian Edward Hill talks about Batman or talks about Star Wars,
Right.
and really like
God, that guy was awesome.
That's so cool.
Do you know that story? Did you hear? We did a podcast with him.
Oh yeah. I spoke with Hunter and Brian both after it.
he's known Brian Edward Hill for 20 years.
I've known Brian for 20 years.
Did you recommend Brian Edward Hill?
Yeah.
Adam Hansen, man.
He's one
Adam
of our
Hansen. We'll call it the Brian Callen Hunter Moss Adam Hansen fucking.
he's one of our creative consumers.
God, I love that guy.
Isn't he great?
I
Yeah,
am-
so I've known him since he was in school.
Right. But that's the thing. I think the idea of maybe the next evolution is you turn it to your audience, give them an assignment.
That's right.
Give them an opportunity.
Yeah.
And say it's not just these smarty pants. It's for anybody who can throw
That's
out.
it.
Well, but that's
It's accessible to everybody,
But
and
you
that's
have
what
to
Hunter's been
guide
saying from
them,
the beginning.
Don't just say, here, you listen to Adam Hansen. Like, write your thing like Adam Hansen.
right.
Tell us what your cognitive bias is.
Right.
Give it, you know what I mean? But make it, really take the next step to make it integrated. And
Yep.
give them a chance to respond.
Yep.
Yeah.
Give them a voice.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, I think I was actually...
And by the way, it'd
yeah.
be kind of cool also to read the best
Yeah.
of the best.
The prize is you get to read their essay.
Yeah, I mean that's pretty
Right,
cool.
and you put that on
Not
your-
to
on your
everybody.
answering machine.
It is what it is, but it's pretty cool. You know,
But
don't
I mean-
have an answering machine. I'm not in
Not
1990.
you, I mean them. I mean your
I thought
audience.
this place was innovative. They're still using answering.
Why are we? Hey, wait a minute. Are the British coming?
Is that
Don't shoot so you can see the whites of their eyes.
Retro is a thing.
Well, that's what, you know that guy in Wait, Don't Tell Me? You know Wait,
Yeah.
Don't Tell Me? The guy, Carl Castle, who just died. But for years, the prize was you get your answer, your voice. Carl Castle being your answering machine. That's
that's
what
Oh yeah,
he just died.
That's right.
It was a
Just died.
bad thing. But
The
the idea
good
of,
news is we've synthesized his voice and it can still continue.
Yeah,
So-
we have a hologram.
But you think about like the sort of class that Ken is talking about, right? What are the parts of a college class? There's a book list, right? That's a curated book list of here are the materials that we think are going to be really valuable for you. There's the professor providing context, which absolutely we can get people like Ken to do if you're game. And then there are assignments. And there's no reason why you can't have all of that. And then on top of that, use online tools to help people meet up offline and have experiences, have conversations, have all the parts of the university experience, because the reality is in terms of the Alvin Toffler quote that I obsess over, the illiterate of the 21st century will not be those who cannot read and write, but those who cannot learn, unlearn, and relearn. We need to turn the whole world into a university.
so maybe what you want to do is look into this whole idea of the MOOC, right? The massive online course system. And maybe that's part of it. Because one of those things, it's like they set it out for 8 weeks and you get your reading list, you get assignments, you check in, and it becomes a sort of structured online learning environment that you can do from a distance.
Well, and what's brilliant about those, like Coursera, is much of the grading is peer review. So it's the other students. So I both submit my stuff, but then I also give feedback on 5 other people's work.
Right.
And what we've learned through our some of the stuff we've done with massive online ideation and everything is that people love entering their ideas, but they also love voting on other people's ideas. You know, and not just to crap on them, but actually they what draws them to that activity in first place also draws them to want to be helpful and to comment and help the overall effort succeed. And so it's not a challenge to get people to give each other feedback. So you then start to get this community feel going. And I now have more stake in it because I'm not just submitting my own stuff, but I'm actually part of helping all of it get better. And that's amazing. And when you pass the mic to people, that's the power. I think that's the real power of social media.
And it's a power that hasn't been tapped yet. Not truly, because the problem is even with the MOOC is it's still the stage on the stage.
That's right.
Yeah.
And the real power is when we have a generative hive mind that, we're all evolving something together. And that's what I love about mixed martial arts, is everybody is evolving mixed martial arts. And
Well, in real time, when you get your lower leg kicked in a fight, Everybody goes, you see those low kicks he was doing? And now everybody's practicing
Yeah.
where they kick the meat of the below your. Used to be you kicked the knee or above where you take out the thigh. Then some dudes were like kicking where the meat of your calf is, and they just keep boom, and dudes were like, I can't walk, I can't answer the bell, and then
So that's
everybody
being-
started kicking low.
So that's being practiced by how many people within 12 hours?
Within 12 hours.
Yeah.
Within 12 fucking hours.
Yeah.
They go, where'd he learn that? And then who's the Thai guy that I can get to bring him for a seminar?
Yeah.
How do you do that off a punch?
Yeah.
You know, and it became everything.
The point is, even an anti-Mongol beta male like myself looks at the way that mixed martial arts is evolving, and I'm like, we need some of that in the nerd world.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
we need that fast evolution. We need that democracy. We need
The way Google did.
That's
The
right.
way Pixar does.
That's right.
You know, the way the Pink Panther jewel thieves
Yep.
do.
Yeah.
Like you have to apply these in real time, and
Yeah.
you better work together. And there better not be any boss here. It's best idea wins, man.
Yeah.
That's the other thing that I really appreciate. It seems to me that the best companies don't have that. Who was it? There was an economist. Somebody said the U.S. economy works because nobody's in control. Nobody's ultimately in control of our economy. The president's not in control. Janet Yellen's not in control. And it should be that way. It should be a chaotic sort of...
evolutionary system.
yeah.
Well, it's Hunter's favorite economist, Hayek, talked about the knowledge problem, right? And that's, I mean, if Hayek gave us a contribution, I think that's right up there with it being one of the key ones. But just like no one can control it because it is uncontrollable at that level.
Yeah.
And so having disseminated knowledge and experimentation and feedback loops, I think is really what it's all about. And then order emerges from planning just barely enough.
That's right.
Just enough structure, not too much. But getting past this notion that it could be controlled at a large scale. No, you can only set up conditions so that you can increase the odds of good outcomes, and that's it. And that's about it.
Well, it's the same thing as sports. Like that's why I think this, there are certain words that trigger Brian Callen, right? Like cooperation. That's a scary word for you.
Yeah.
Because you know that cooperation is code for
Communist.
communist suppression.
Well, it starts
right?
with the same first two letters.
Fuck.
So,
Yeah.
I mean, it's,
Cooperation, exactly. You see that? You see that? God damn it.
But the point is that Brian Callen understands sports, and he understands that you have to be very intentional about what the rule set is in sports to maximize competition.
that's right.
And so if we're talking about getting together to rewrite the rule book around politics to maximize competition or whatever it may be, it's all, and different people are going to need to hear the story in different ways in order to create that really dynamic, healthy system.
Well, the different ways, meaning you got to create a narrative, a very attractive metaphor and narrative,
That's right.
for people. That's what wins. One of the things I think is interesting is that when we came to Continuum, they give you a badge to wear, and it actually is a necklace, and Adam is the only person wearing it around his neck.
Because I am nothing if not
And
compliant.
I was going to say, and for me, I held it in my hand. I looked at it and I
Was
went,
that what it's supposed to be?
yeah.
Hey, you're a visitor.
I do.
Oh, I thought-
I do these
Or
little
V
things.
for VIP backstage.
I wanted to
pass.
be.
I'm one of those guys when they
Maybe
give me
for
a name
Virgin.
when they give me a name tag when I come into a building
Yeah.
and everybody wears it on their thing. It annoys me. I wear it on my hip.
Well,
I wear it
Well,
on-
that's where you want the attention.
That's exactly where I want the attention. That's where I want the attention.
You mean
And then-
Brian Salsa count?
Yes, and then this I carry it. I carry it in my hand. But Adam, like a good boy, wears it around his neck. So that's the difference. I'm also wearing cashmere and leather, and he's not.
I'm recommitting to
Sorry,
my own
Ken,
sense.
sorry.
You're cooler than Adam.
I'm just saying, bro. I'm just saying.
I am
As
blazing
long
a
as you
trail
understand.
for men's accessories, and this is my choice.
That's
I'm
right.
also really excited for Brian's erotic novel series, Cashmere and Leather.
Yes. Yes. You play the music. When you open the page, there's a little like voice thing. Yeah. That's not very erotic. Sounds like I'm good stuff. I can't believe there's music to this podcast now.
It's your first.
Well, it's
Innovation.
Yeah,
first
we're
I
up
got the
in
melodica
production
right
level.
over there,
first.
Brian.
It's
See the
the first.
melodica?
The
Melodica's
melodica.
it's coming out at
I
some
like
point.
that.
Then.
I like that.
But yeah, I think in terms of evolving this more and more and more to make it more and more useful, and to make it more and more practical. And some of the stuff is practical on a personal level, and some of the stuff is going to require some level of cooperation among people to evolve shared narratives that we can get better, that we can take action on.
Yeah, it's true. By the way, I just realized that you had mentioned this, but we're in a hospital room.
We're literally in a hospital room.
I mean, there's a hospital bed behind me.
It's the metaphor.
That's America. It's feeling a little sick right now. But...
It's so scary. Is this because you guys are innovating around a hospital room?
Yeah, this is actually a project we did with Herman Miller for the future of the hospital room.
Herman Miller did the Aaaand chair.
That's right.
Yep.
Would it kill you to have some plants in here? No,
it's not a real hospital.
All right, fine. But what is the idea?
These right on rails, these sort of modular wooden panels.
Yeah.
And the idea being that because hospitals are super expensive and technology is always evolving and changing, and you sunk a whole lot of money into building a hospital.
Yeah.
If you were able to create a room where you could actually swap out what's the electronics and the various component parts of it, you can be much more flexible about this sort of $1 billion hospital that you're putting together.
Damn.
See, these things are all off the floor.
Yeah.
So you can clean much easier because the panels make it easier to get. And you look over there, the sloping sinks. I don't know if you can see that, but the sinks are sloping in to eliminate splashing, so it keeps it cleaner out there. So not only can you clean it underneath there, and if you get way up top, the gloves and stuff like that, you don't have to touch anything. You just pull it right out of there. So everything in this room is set up to keep it sort of antiseptic as possible, and to make sure that you can really keep a hospital room as clean as it should be. So it's flexible and it's antiseptic, and it's sort of a way of rethinking about how you put together these extremely expensive places where sick people go.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
And that's honestly what we should be doing with everything at this stage, because technology is evolving so quickly. We should always be. Do you want to tell the story about the delaminating the map?
Well, yeah, it's just the idea is that we all have to operate from maps because we need shortcuts. We have to have some kind of working model. Often those maps, so in politics and religion, in all the major areas of life, right? Too often those maps are inextricably, kind of wound in with current culture or the culture we grew up in or whatever else that may or may not necessarily have all that much to do with this particular area, but we think it is because it's all conflated and we don't know otherwise. We only learned about politics in this particular way in our family, and I do make the joke that I was 16 before I figured out that the term damn Democrat wasn't one word. And of course, I'm not there now, but because it's now a different expletive. But no, I kid. I kid the Democrats.
I kid.
I love how expert they handled the last election.
Yeah, that was really good.
And so,
yeah.
But the every now and again we have to delaminate the map. We have to say this being so bound up with that culture is only messing us up, and not necessarily. We're not gaining anything from that. So we actually have to be able to take a step back and really hold the map objectively, and not just like as a subject. That's not us. That's just a tool we use. And if we can delaminate the culture from this thing, then we can kind of figure out fresh ways now to kind of adhere to it. Because you need to have some kind of operating system behind the map to actually make it usable. You just need to be really conscious of what that is. And every now and again, making that separation is absolutely critical, and it happens, once every X generations or whatever.
So give me an example of what you mean by that.
Well, so just even what are the assumptions that the Enlightenment brought that are played out in the political realm, right? Or
well, let's take that example.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So it's about individual excellence.
Yeah.
Right. That reason and emotion are separate. That it's all about the assumptions around masculinity, race, whatever.
Yeah.
And a certain level of zero-sum thinking.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, competition.
I was also thinking, the Thomas Sowell's book, Black Rednecks and White Liberals, and he talks about how slavery from time immemorial was just what you did. If there was a vulnerable population, you went and enslaved them.
Yeah.
And the moral thinkers and the religious thinkers never really brought up the fact that it was bad.
Well, because
Socrates and Plato and no one really talked about. I suppose you could make the argument that Christ's general message was one that we're all sort of equal and stuff, but not really. Everybody, the monasteries had slaves.
Well, we're all equal to the extent that we can think of all people as fully people, right? And so they went as far as they could. And again, part of that was their approach to that. The reason why they could say that and not be critical to themselves was they just had no other way of thinking about it. And that did make sense. And that actually did help them change behavior within that still too tight of a circle of, who's in and who's a real person. So being just kind of always having this helpful paranoia about our reality maps.
That's right.
That's
a good point.
Yeah,
helpful paranoia.
Just understanding.
This is not necessarily the only way to do it. Well, even though it's been done for so long.
So Chuck Klosterman's most recent book is called "But What If We're Wrong?" And the answer is, of course we are. So his point is, we don't have to go back very far. We can go back 20 years. The further back we go, the easier it is. But we can go back 20 years and say, well, we clearly had that wrong. We clearly had this wrong. We clearly had that wrong. We go back to our parents' generation. We go, good Lord, come on. But yet it's hard for us to imagine what that could be for us now that even we'll look back on in 20 years or 30 years, much less the succeeding generations. But of course we have some things that are wrong. So not being so subjectivized about, not being so thinking that these approaches just have to be, and they're so important to me, they're not just tools, they're actually just part of me. That hurts us. And we ought to be able to take that step back. It's hard work.
Yeah.
And it's, the David Foster Wallace commencement speech about the fishes, swimming along, and the older fish swims by and goes, "Morning, boys, how's the water?" And the one turns around and goes, "Water? What the hell's water?" These assumptions are so baked in that we can't even. It is hard to think about them, but just because they're hard to think about doesn't mean that we shouldn't.
And that's the thing. I think it requires a certain level of humility to even begin saying, "Shit, this might all be wrong.
Yeah.
Where am I wrong, and how can I change?"
And
it?
confidence.
Yeah.
The confidence to have that humility that you can sit in that space of not knowing and potentially having to admit that you've been doing harm, that you fucked up.
Or there's
in a
just
whole
a
bunch
better
of ways.
way to do this.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Surely.
But that's why having presenting conversations about it, particularly with super smart guys who you think they know everything, when you create the vulnerability where they can say, maybe this is wrong, you're modeling that idea of humility before your map.
Yeah.
And that's super important.
Well, and showing them that it is, it's okay. There's a good place you can arrive at on the other side of that. We're not just saying this to be nihilistic, so that there just can't be a firm ground for anything, whatever. It is. I think it's just being. You're bringing more of yourself to kind of the bigger challenges, I think, when you think this way.
Right, and to swing it back to MMA, that's when you're getting these super brilliant folks who can actually demonstrate that and let you see it in real time.
Yeah.
In a format where people can feel it and observe it and go, that's important, because you don't get a lot of that in our culture.
Yeah.
There's
So
not
Ken,
a lot of that live learning.
Well, I was going to ask you, what might you call that?
I might call that live learning.
I think live learning.
And that's one of the things Adam and I, we've known each other for, I don't know,
two and a half, 3. Yeah.
And we go to these innovation conferences, and we both get really I get pissed off. I don't know how you feel, but it's just the people who are going up there and doing their prepared set,
Yeah.
And I'm like, I want to see someone doing a real thing on stage and really showing us that they can learn in the moment.
And we've seen that.
Yeah, we did see it from Kari Anderson, right?
Well, and Mr. Hagel.
Yeah. We've seen people get up there and rip up their.
What they do?
They're like, I came up and I had this plan to talk about this thing, and I've been here for 5 minutes. I realized that's just bullshit, and they let go.
This is what you need to hear.
Yeah.
Not what I had. Not what I had in the can.
That's right.
And that vulnerability, but again,
that becomes an act too after a while.
Well, that does.
I'm ripping out my notes is a trope.
But you can tell when it's inauthentic. And
that's right. That's right.
Yeah, that's true.
But both of us are sort of hungering for we want to see people come have a real conversation where they're challenging their assumptions in front of other people.
And see some of the conversations that we've had around what you guys do in ideation sessions, which is basically there are all these improvisational styles. There's improvisational music, jazz, right? There's improvisational comedy, but what they do and what I think is performance art that we all need to see is improvisational problem solving. where it's like, okay, guys, the challenge for today is campaign finance. In the room, we have Ken Gordon and Adam Hansen, who are going to be moderating. We also have Howard Bloom, who was the PR and marketing executive behind Styx, Billy Joel, and all these other people.
Prince and Michael Jackson.
Prince and Michael Jackson. We have, whoever it is, but you have that you have like this really interesting grab bag of people, and they're all going to gang up on some problem, some real issue.
See, that's very interesting.
Yeah.
And that should be what we should be trying to do.
Yep.
Yeah. I think live idea jams on important topics.
Live idea jams
is
are
something
great.
that has to happen.
Yep.
What did you say? Living
Live learning.
Live learning.
Live learning.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Where the presenter isn't so buttoned up, so again just canned, rote. It can be bloodless, right?
Right, but I think the idea of putting someone who really knows what they're talking about, someone who's really thoughtful in a live position, and saying, "Do it now. Let's you do it now," is the unusual thing, because most of those folks,
Yep.
they have their prepared speech and they get paid lots of money for it, and they do it on, whether they're professors or on shows or whatever. And so like
so the opposite of this. So there's a conference we really love in Providence every mid-September. Saul Kaplan is the proprietor there, the Business Innovation Factory Summit. And people kind of get it's a different conference. And so overall, the quality of the presentations are better. And the overly canned, the overly trite, the overly, kind of chest thumping thing isn't prized. And one, I won't name names, but one woman somehow missed the memo. And she got up there and just started doing this just glitzy, it was almost like a pitch to a client to win an ad account, kind of a thing. And you could feel the temperature in the room drop. And you could just kind of see how everyone was just going, how does she not get what this conference is all about? And I think we're just getting away from that. It's got to be tied in somewhat with genius myths and expert myths and all this and everything. Look, you still have something of value you can bring, but the more you can come to the table with the spirit of inquiry, vulnerability, openness, kind of like, can we kind of hash this out together? That is just so much more compelling. And I think if you have a smart crowd, that just draws so much. That pulls you in. That you now get an emotional investment in it as an audience member. You're not just kind of going, oh, that's cool. I got to see blah, blah, blah,
But that comes down to the evolutionary pressures of the technology, right? Yeah. Because when there are a limited number of mics, then what ends up happening is it becomes about dominating the small number of microphones.
That's
and you do that by seeming so much smarter than everybody and having everything so figured out. In an environment where everybody can have a mic, suddenly we're able to speak honestly about what that person is doing. Is like, yeah, they try and act this way, but the reality is this, or that doesn't fit with whatever. And so the environment of the internet demands a different culture, where instead of the sage on the stage, what we want people who model and help create the right emotional climate for real idea sex to happen. And in the end, Brian, you started this whole thing. And you started this whole thing because I was in LA talking about these books, and literally nobody else would talk to me about them. And you were actually interested in them.
Yeah.
And the point is that I was like, oh shit, I get to have these conversations. And then it was like, oh shit, maybe we could hijack your celebrity, the brand you built, to talk to these people.
Yeah, and it works.
So Hunter comes clean.
Yeah.
This is the whole.
Yeah.
Oh, this was the whole.
So I'll
thing.
take full credit. You guys are listening to the Brian Callen Experience /show/problem solving live learning forum. That's 1 hour, ladies and gentlemen. I hope you learned a lot.
There's this thing on Netflix. It's like Masters of Cinema. Right? They have all directors and stuff like that. And I was flipping through a bunch of them, and one was Clint Eastwood, and one was Ethan Hawke, and one was Ice Cube.
I know. I worked with him.
And then Ice Cube is talking, and he's like, and they're saying to him, Ice Cube, you have the most people who've come to any of these talks by far.
Yeah.
And the kids were totally energized. You could just tell. And I think there was something there in the power of harnessing the power of celebrity to get people interested in learning.
Yeah.
Is something you've done. I think that's part of what you've really got here. You're building on that, understanding how that works, understanding what an audience wants and needs and is excited by.
Yeah.
coupled by this other stuff. And it's sort of, and I think that's what's like. There's possibilities there.
Well, but that's the relationship between entertainment and education.
Right.
Like the entertainment hooks the attention.
That's
right.
right.
Like here's this great story about a man who dresses up like a bat, and you're like, oh my god, and his parents are dead, and all of that.
Yeah.
But then in the process, you then have that relationship with the text where you're mining out those lessons, and that's where the real education happens.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's the whole point. Is that's what we want to do. You've got like interesting thing happening that grabs your attention. But wait, there's more. And, as you dig into it, then you're unpacking a richer and richer experience. And, part of what I love about, using pop culture that way, whether it's a rock album or comic books or comedy or whatever it may be, is that people are already hooked. Like that, you've already got their attention.
Right.
And now you're just saying, yes, and build on that.
Yeah.
And now really mine out those lessons. Because we have all the pieces that we need to create this, global university.
Right.
Like the entertainment exists, it just hasn't been mined, and it hasn't been, had all of the marrow sucked out of those bones.
Well, I'm breaking down some of these false dichotomies that if it's too entertaining, it's suspect as being substantive, and you go, no, guys. I mean, it's really grappling with who humans really are. I think some of the breakthroughs that we've had in behavioral science and everything just help us understand this better. That I actually am going to have more takeaway if I'm invested emotionally in this stuff, and if I strictly keep it as a heady experience, that can be kind of fun, intellectual mind candy.
Well, it's where it starts.
Well, it's where it starts, but so it really is both and. It really is affirming. It really is how do we connect head and heart, and in doing so, you actually get a better response. In the head, you actually retain it better. You actually now have a stake in it, and so you're actually more likely getting back to action. I'm more likely now to do something with it,
and I think
because I care about it, and so it's the science often answers the why, but entertainment, drama, comedy, all these different forms answer the why I give a crap, And I think you need both why does this work, what's behind this, but then why do I care? And I think that's where some real magic can come together.
Yeah, I think one of the things you want to think about is what your audience wants to learn, what they want to apply, what they want to implement, and why.
Yeah.
Really giving that.
What they want to learn,
what they're going to do with all this. How are they going to change their lives, their communities, their culture?
Yeah.
Because you've done a good job of starting the conversation.
I think a lot of it is that there are a lot of issues. One is that people are too disoriented to really find meaning and purpose. Mm-hmm. They feel like they don't have the huge part of it. I think a lot of people, because of the nature of how complicated things is that they feel like they have nothing to offer.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
They feel like they as an individual, their voice, their example, their effort really doesn't make a difference.
Yeah.
So there becomes this ennui, this idea that not only are these ideas kind of out of reach, but also even if I had them, they wouldn't bear any relevance to me, to my life. And things are moving so quickly that there seems to be this again, it's a narrative. There's this elite, and they're kind of mostly white and Asian, and they drink, they grind their own coffee, but they're coming up with these amazing ideas in very clean, antiseptic rooms, and they like sushi, and, you know what I mean? And then the rest of us, I do, and the rest of us are toiling away and kind of like we're being controlled by like little puppets.
Yeah.
There are a lot of those narratives out there that kind of create anger, resentment, resignation, and all those things. Yeah. And I think that what we're trying to do is give them ammunition. We're trying to give them not only the idea that this is for you as well, so can you. Yeah.
Well, what's clear is that this effort of combining it with action, I think it's all about Ken.
It's all about Ken?
Taking it to the streets, I think. And so
taking it to the streets.
You don't know me, but
I'm your brother.
I was raised here in this living hell. You don't know my kind in your world.
How's it
Tied in poverty's despair.
Do we have to do the whole song?
And you telling me the thing you wanna do for me.
Taking it to the streets.
I'm blind and I don't like what I think I see.
Taking it to the street.
Taking it to the street.
All right. Cut.
My buddy Mike always says it's like he's yawning. Taking it to the... That's a great song. Thank you for that. Adam Hansen. No
Ken
other
Gordon.
words. And Ken
Gordon,
Gordon.
come
Ken
on.
Gordon with those love snakes he calls fingers.
Cooperation. It's all about cooperation.
Yes.
Collaborate.
Or
Love
inspiration. Or inspiration.
There we are.
God.
Yeah,
Anyway,
there we are.
I have a boner. Which we should call, this podcast should be called American Boner. Is that too much?
There's a new reality
Yeah,
show.
because I only want dudes listening. There's a,
Now, wait a minute. Is this is a half serious question? Can you capitalize on your new show? Congratulations.
Thank
about
you.
Being a teacher.
Yes, Brian.
Is there some way you can?
I'm a coach. I mean, I'm a
Well, you should be
Coach,
an intellectual coach.
yeah.
Well, that's the
See,
thing.
I think it's
The
it's
stage on the
hilarious.
it's the idea of moving from the stage on the stage to
Yeah.
the coach on the side.
Yeah.
That's a legit
Yeah.
thing in
I mean,
education.
this guy's is a product of the 1980s. He's
Right.
a product of. He's my dad back. He's a Marine. Drop and give me 20.
But he has a sensitive side, which is important. So
He
he
does.
has
Yeah, you're right.
head and heart, man.
Yeah.
You know?
Who knows? I just want enough money so I can have people killed. Have him killed.
That's
I want to do that.
That was actually-
Bring him to me, but break him first. as
The
I say.
apex of Maslow's hierarchy above self-actualization was that power.
The power to have
How to
people.
assassinate.
To have the power. To have the power to have people killed. Yeah, man, I appreciate this, guys, and I appreciate Continuum giving us this amazing hospital room / innovation space to come up with ideas. Kip, thanks so much for your amazing engineering. He's a loud, overbearing guy. I wish you guys could see him. Aggressive too, an aggressive man, a Mongol.
But the subtle way that he does it is what's so...
Indeed. This is awesome, man.
Oh wait a minute. So we're gonna do our song to play out? Is that we're gonna try?
What do you want to do, man?
Oh, this is exciting. Oh,
Dude, it's
you-
so-
Oh, get out of
the
here.
wait. It's
Oh,
called.
that song, of course. We are doing
by
that song.
J.R. Robertson. I pulled
Okay.
into Nazareth. Oh,
We're doing in G?
We're doing it in G.
now are we allowed to? Will we get in trouble for singing a song? Who knows? Who cares?
Are you making money off this?
I'm making no money.
off it.
We're making zero money.
Yeah,
off
yeah.
this. There's no advertising. or anything.
No, you're not making money off it.
Kip, good idea.
Uh,
Oh wait a minute. Who's
so,
gonna start?
so
I pulled in.
we're
Nazareth.
going to trade verses, yeah?
Sounds good. Okay.
Okay.
Just cue me when I have to sing. So what are we doing now? Am I singing? We're all singing, right?
You're gonna take first verse.
All right. I pulled into Nazareth, was feeling about half past dead. I just need some place where I can lay my head. Help me. Hey, mister, can you tell me where my man might find a bed? He just grinned and shook my hand and said, no, was all he said. I'll find it.
Here we go.
Take the load off, man.
Lord, I'm Fanny.
Take a load for free.
Take a load off Fanny. And you put the load right on me.
This is terrible. This is great. Keep going.
Under.
Picked up my bag. I went looking for a place to hide. When I saw Coleman and the devil walking side by side, I said, hey, Coleman, come on, let's go downtown. She said, I gotta go, but my friend didn't stick around.
Take a load off Fanny. Take a load for free. Take a load off Fanny.
And you put the load right on me.
Go down, Miss Moses. There's nothing you can say. Just old Luke, and Luke's waiting on Judgment Day. Well, Luke, my friend, what about young Anna Lee? He said, do me a favor, son. Won't you stay on? Keep Anna Lee company.
Take a load off, Fanny.
Sorry.
Take a load for free.
Take a load off, Fanny.
And you put the load on me.
Grace just followed me and he caught me in the fall.
He said, I will fix your racket, you take Jack my dog. I said, wait a minute, Chester, you know I'm a peaceful man. He said, that's okay, boy, you can feel it when you can. Take a load off, Fanny. Take a load for free. Take a load off, Fanny.
And you put the load right on me.
I want to apologize to all listeners for this. Everybody together. Ready?
Catch a cannonball now to take me down the line. My bag is sinking low, and I do believe it's time to go back to Miss Fanny. You know she's the only one who sent me here with her regards for everyone.
Bring it home. Take a load off, Fanny. Take a load for free. Take a load off, Fanny.
And put the load right on me.
Wow, that was you don't. I don't care what anybody says. You don't get better than that, ladies and gentlemen. You just don't get better than that.
No, we don't.
Wow. As Woody Allen would say, was somebody sawing a trumpet in half or strangling a parrot?
In general, can we
God.
call our cover band of the band a band?
Let's just call it, yeah, or just call it terrible.
Yeah, okay.
Why don't just call it? We should call our band. Let's call our band. What the fuck? Four white guys. All right, everybody.
They're not going to be suing us for using their music. They're going to be suing us for destroying their music.
I was gonna say,
Defamation.
but you know what? The keys were good. Good music.
The keys were awesome.
Ken Gordon, Adam Hansen, Hunter Motz. Thank you very much, boys. This is great.
Absolutely.
I think we got some work done. More than just smart talk. We did some singing. We did some laughing. We did some strategizing.
Right on.
From Continuum in Boston, Massachusetts. Good night and good luck, everyone. That was great, guys. What a blast.
Oh, that was fun.
What a fucking
That's very fun.
What a blast.
Good Lord, that was fun.
That was good stuff.
Well, there you are.
Yep.
All right.
And lots of good possibilities in terms of things we can do next.
When are we going to MIT?
Right now.
I'm gonna invite Rogan,
Are
maybe.
you hitting the...
Was he in town?
Yeah, he opened for me last night. Did an hour.
That's amazing.
Who's that?
Rogan's shooting a special at Wilbur Theater, so.
Get the hell out of here, really?
Where are we going?
Also-
Research, the MIT research?
MIT Media Lab. I'll give the address.
Oh, that's
Media
awesome.
Lab's
What are you
great.
doing there?
We're interviewing Cesar Hidalgo.
That's cool. We're going to be doing. We're part of a hackathon. They're doing breast pump hackathon, and they're redesigning
Who is
breast
Cesar
pump.
Hidalgo?
He is a physicist turned economist who basically studies, why information grows, and then the atlas of economic complexity, and basically where prosperity comes from.
Wow.
That's cool.
Again, small topics.
Yeah, small.
The Brian Callen Show, powered by Mixed Mental Arts. Small topics.
I was gonna say.
Navel gazing with Brian Callen.
The confident men
Yep.
who can go into small topics.
How far away is it? What time are we going? What time do we have to be there? 2?
Right now, 1:30.
All right.
All right, let's get you guys packed up.
Yeah.
Do you guys want to grab some lunch?
Yeah, let's go grab
All right,
some.
let's